Too late they realized humans were the first elder race. Part 1. The discovery of the spaceship Meridian moved slowly through the dark void of space. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at the main window, looking down at the dead planet below. The world was gray and lifeless, with no signs of the green forests or blue oceans that once covered its surface. Only broken rocks and twisted metal remained. "This is it," she said to her team. "Planet Kepler 44 to be. The computers show it died exactly 6 million years ago." Elena was the leader of the galaxy's best team of ancient history experts. Her job was to find old civilizations and learn about them, but this planet was special. It had the same strange marks that other dead worlds had, marks that could only be made by the first ones. The first ones were a mystery. Every smart race in the galaxy knew the stories about them. They were supposed to be the first civilization to ever exist. They had amazing technology that no one could understand. They could destroy entire planets with their weapons. They could travel between stars faster than light itself. But no one had ever found proof they were real, until now. "The readings are very strange," said Dr. Marcus Webb, Elena's partner. He was a thin man with gray hair, who spent most of his time studying computer data. "The energy patterns match what we expected from First One technology. But there's something else." Elena looked at the other members of her team. Commander Thek was from the Altarian Republic. His people had 4 eyes and blue skin. They were one of the smartest races in the galaxy. Science Officer Vex came from the Centauri Collective. His body was made of living crystal that changed colors when he was excited. Both of these races had been exploring space for 50,000 years. They knew more about ancient history than almost anyone, but even they had never seen anything like this. "What kind of something else?" Elena asked. Marcus looked at his instruments again. His hands were shaking slightly. "The planet isn't completely dead. There are still power sources running deep underground. After 65 million years, something is still working down there." Elena felt her heart beat faster. In all her years of studying ancient worlds, she had never found active technology from the first ones. Everything they had ever discovered was broken or dead. But here was a world that still had power running through it. "How is that possible?" asked Commander Thek. His voice came through a breathing machine that helped him speak in human languages. "My people have studied ancient technology for thousands of years. Nothing can work for 65 million years without someone taking care of it. That's what makes this so important," Elena said. "We're going to find working First One technology. We might finally learn who they really were." The team spent the next few hours studying the planet from their ship. The surface was covered with the remains of huge cities. The buildings were made from metals that no one recognized. Some of the structures were so big that they could be seen from space. They were all broken and twisted, as if something had tried to melt them with incredible heat. "Look at this," said Vex, his crystal body turning bright orange with excitement. "The destruction pattern is very specific. It wasn't random. Someone did this on purpose." Elena studied the images on her screen. Vex was right. The damage to the Azet planet's surface followed a clear pattern. It was as if someone had carefully destroyed every single building, every road, every sign that a civilization had ever existed there. "Why would anyone destroy their own planet?" Marcus asked. "Maybe they didn't have a choice," Elena said quietly. The team's computers found more interesting details. The planet had once been covered with water. It had breathable air and perfect weather for life. But something had changed all of that in a very short time. The oceans had boiled away. The air had been burned off. The whole world had been turned into a dead rock. "The timeline is very specific," Marcus said, reading from his instruments. "This all happened in less than 100 years. Probably much less." Elena was quiet for a long moment. She had studied dozens of dead worlds, but none of them had been destroyed so quickly and completely. Whatever had happened here was beyond anything she had ever seen. "We need to go down there," she said finally. "That could be dangerous," Commander Thek warned. "If there is still active technology down there, we don't know what it might do." "That's exactly why we need to go," Elena replied. "This might be our only chance to learn the truth about the first ones." The team prepared their equipment for the journey to the planet's surface. They would need special suits to protect them from the radiation that still covered the world. They would need digging tools to reach the underground areas where the power sources were located. Most importantly, they would need recording devices to capture everything they found. As Alina put on her protective suit, she thought about the stories she had heard as a child. Every race in the galaxy had legends about the first ones. They were described as gods who could create life and destroy worlds. They had supposedly traveled to every corner of the galaxy, leaving behind wonders that no one could explain. But the stories also said that the first ones had disappeared suddenly. One day they were everywhere, ruling the galaxy with their amazing technology. The next day they were gone, leaving behind only empty worlds and broken machines. Maybe we'll finally learn what happened to them, Alina said to herself. The landing shuttle carried the team down through the planet's thin atmosphere. As they got closer to the surface, Alina could see the true size of the ancient cities. The buildings were enormous, much bigger than anything humans had ever built. Them reached up into the sky like metal mountains. But they were all dead. No lights, no movement, no signs of life anywhere. The shuttle landed near what looked like the entrance to an underground facility. The metal door was partially melted, but there was still a clear opening that led down into darkness. Energy readings are very strong here, Marcus reported. Whatever is down there is using a lot of power. Alina looked at her team. They had come so far to reach this place. They had spent months traveling through space, following clues and ancient star maps. Now they were finally here, standing at the entrance to what might be the greatest discovery in galactic history. Let's go find out who the first ones really were, she said. The team walked through the melted doorway and began their descent into the underground facility. Behind them, the dead planet waited in silence, keeping its secrets buried deep beneath the surface. But those secrets were about to be revealed. Alina didn't know it yet, but she was about to discover something that would change everything. The galaxy believed about its own history, something that would make her question everything she thought she knew about the universe, something that would prove the first ones were closer to home than anyone had ever imagined. Too late they realized humans were the first elder race. Part 2, the underground facility. Elena and her team walked down the dark tunnel for what felt like hours. Their lights cut through the darkness, showing walls made of smooth metal that seemed to glow with its own inner light. The air was warm and clean, which was impossible. This facility had been sealed for 65 million years, but somehow it still had fresh air. These readings don't make sense, Marcus said, looking at his instruments. The air is perfectly breathable. The temperature is exactly right for human comfort. It's like this place was built for us. Commander Vec made a worried sound through his breathing machine. The people have explored hundreds of ancient sites. None of them ever had working life support systems. The tunnel finally opened into a huge underground chamber. Lena stopped walking and stared. The room was so big that their lights couldn't reach the ceiling. Strange machines lined the walls, humming quietly with power. Blue and green lights blinked in patterns that almost looked like they were trying to communicate. By the stars, whispered Vex, his crystal body turning bright yellow with amazement. This technology is beyond anything I've ever seen. Alina walked toward the center of the chamber. In the middle stood a tall crystal structure that pulsed with soft white light. It was beautiful and frightening at the same time. Energy flowed through it like liquid lightning, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. The power source, she said. This is what's been running for 65 million years. Marcus held up his instruments and shook his head in disbelief. The energy output is incredible. This single crystal produces more power than our entire ship, but I can't figure out how it works. Alina approached the crystal carefully. She got closer. She could hear something that sounded almost like music. The crystal was singing to itself, a low hum that seemed to vibrate in her bones. She reached out her hand, then stopped. What if touching it is dangerous? She asked herself, but something inside her said it would be safe. She couldn't explain the feeling, but she trusted it. Alina placed her palm against the crystal's smooth surface. The chamber exploded with light. Suddenly, the walls were covered with moving pictures made of pure energy. Star maps appeared in the air, showing the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago. Lena could see young stars burning bright and planets that were still forming from cosmic dust. "What did you do?" Marcus asked, his voice full of wonder and fear. "I don't know," Alina replied. "But it's showing us something important." The star maps changed, focusing on one particular solar system. Alina recognized it immediately. It was their own solar system, but it looked different. The sun was younger and brighter. The planets were in slightly different positions. But the third planet from the sun was the most shocking sight of all, where Earth should have been gray and lifeless. Like it was 65 million years ago, there was instead a world covered in impossible cities. The continents were the same shape, but they were covered with structures that reached up into space. Thin lines of light connected the cities, creating a web of energy that covered the entire planet. "That's Earth," Elena whispered, "but not the Earth we know." The holographic display zoomed in on the planet, showing details that made Elena's heart race. The cities were beautiful beyond description. Buildings that looked like they were grown rather than built reached up toward the sky. Flying vehicles moved between them in perfect harmony. And in the oceans, she could see underwater cities that glowed with their own light. "Impossible," said Commander Thek. "Earth was a dead world 65 million years ago. Our scientists have proven this." But the display continued to show them more. The beings who lived in these cities appeared on the screen, and Elena felt her breath catch in her throat. They were tall and graceful, with technology that seemed like magic. They could manipulate matter with their bare hands. They could travel between stars as easily as walking from one room to another. And they looked exactly like humans. "No," Marcus said, staring at the images. "This can't be real. Humans didn't exist 65 million years ago." But Alina was beginning to understand something that terrified her. These weren't just beings who looked like humans. The bone structure, the way they moved, even their facial expressions, everything was perfectly human. But they were somehow more than human too. They glowed with inner light. They could do things that seemed impossible. "They're not like us," she said quietly. "They're what we could become." The holographic display showed more of their civilization. Alina watched in amazement as these ancient humans built machines that could create new stars. They traveled too. Distant galaxies in ships that were works of art. They had technology that could heal any injury, prevent any disease, even stop the aging process completely. "They were gods," Vex said, his crystal body now pure white with shock. These beings were actual gods. The display changed again, showing the ancient humans visiting other worlds. Alina watched them land on planets across the galaxy, including worlds that she recognized. They were the homeworlds of Commander, Vec, and Vex, but millions of years in the past. On each world, the ancient humans did something that Alina couldn't quite understand. They seemed to be planting something, or maybe changing something about the planets themselves. Whatever they were doing, it was clearly important to them. They were preparing something, Alina said. But what? Marcus was studying the energy patterns in the holographic display. "Look at the timeline," he said. "All of this happened right before the great extinction event on Earth, right before everything died." Lena felt a chill run down her spine. The great extinction that had killed the dinosaurs and reset life on Earth had happened exactly 65 million years ago, the same time this ancient human civilization had existed. "That's not a coincidence," she said. The holographic display seemed to respond to her words. New images appeared, showing the final days of the ancient human civilization. Alina watched in horror as their beautiful cities began to change. The technology that had made them godlike was starting to change them too. The ancient humans were evolving, but not in a good way. They were becoming something else, something that was no longer recognizably human. Their bodies were changing, becoming more like living energy than flesh and blood. Their minds were expanding beyond anything that could be called human consciousness. "We're losing themselves," Elena whispered. Their own technology was transforming them into something alien. The final images showed the ancient humans making a terrible choice. Rather than let themselves become monsters, they chose to destroy everything they had built. Elena watched in stunned silence as they turned their godlike powers against their own civilization. The cities were dissolved. The technology was dismantled. Even the planets they had lived on were wiped clean. In the space of a few decades, the greatest civilization in galactic history erased itself from existence. But why? Alina stared at the crystal, knowing that it held more answers. The ancient humans had left this facility for a reason. They had preserved their history, their technology, and their knowledge. They had waited 65 million years for someone to find it, but who were they waiting for? Too late they realized humans were the first elder race part. 3. The galaxy's secret. Elena kept her hand on the crystal, as more images filled the chamber. The story that unfolded before her eyes changed everything she thought she knew about the galaxy. The ancient humans hadn't just lived on Earth. They had traveled to every corner of space, visiting thousands of worlds over millions of years. "Look at this," Marcus said, pointing to a new set of star maps that appeared in the air. They went everywhere. Every inhabited world in the galaxy has been visited by these ancient humans. The holographic display showed the ancient humans' great journey across the stars. Lena watched them travel in ships that looked like living things made of the same crystal material as the power source she was touching. These ships could cross the galaxy in days, moving faster than anything modern science thought possible. But the ancient humans weren't exploring for fun. They had a purpose, and Alina was beginning to understand what it was. They were gardeners. She whispered the images showed the ancient humans landing on empty worlds, planets that had the right conditions for life, but no intelligent beings living on them. Alina watched as they walked across these barren landscapes, studying the rocks, the water, the primitive life forms that existed there. Then they began to work, using technology that Alina couldn't begin to understand. The ancient humans changed. These worlds, they didn't destroy what was already there. Instead, they carefully guided evolution, making small changes that would have huge effects over millions of years. "Genetic engineering," said Vex, his crystal body now flashing different colors as he tried to process what he was seeing. But not just engineering. They were creating entirely new forms of life. Alina watched the ancient humans plant something that looked like seeds in the ground of these empty worlds. But these weren't plant seeds. They were genetic templates, blueprints for intelligent life that would grow and develop over millions of years. "They were creating us," she said, the truth hitting her like a physical blow. "All of us." Commander Thek made a sound of disbelief through his breathing machine. "That's impossible. My people evolved naturally on Altair Prime. Our scientists have traced our development back for millions of years." But the holographic display showed him the truth. Alina watched as ancient humans visited a world with blue oceans and purple skies, a world that looked exactly like Altair Prime. She saw them plant their genetic seeds and then leave, knowing that millions of years later, those seeds would grow into the Altarian people. The same thing happened on world after world. The crystal beings who would become Vex's people. The gas-breathing species that lived in the outer rim. The plant-like intelligences of the inner systems. Every intelligent race in the galaxy had been created by the ancient humans. "We're all their children," Alina said, her voice barely above a whisper. But there was more to the story. The holographic display showed Alina why the ancient humans had done this. They weren't just creating new species for the fun of it. They were preparing for something. The images changed to show the ancient humans themselves. But now Alina could see what was happening to them. Their incredible technology was changing them in ways they couldn't control. They were becoming more powerful, but they were also becoming less human. "They were evolving too fast," Marcus said, studying the energy readings that appeared alongside the images. Their brains were growing beyond what their bodies could handle. Their consciousness was expanding beyond what any physical form could contain. Alina watched in fascination and horror as the ancient humans began to change. Some of them started to glow with inner light. Others became partially transparent, as if they were turning into pure energy. A few seemed to split into multiple copies of themselves, their consciousness spreading across several bodies at once. "They were becoming gods," she said, but they didn't want to be gods. A holographic display showed conversations between the ancient humans, translated into words that Alina could understand. She listened as they debated what to do about their transformation. "We are losing what makes us human," one of them said. "Our emotions are fading. Our ability to feel love, compassion, fear, all of it is disappearing as our minds expand. We must find a way to preserve our humanity, said another. If we continue on this path, we will become monsters with the power of gods, Alina realized. She was watching the most important conversation in galactic history. The ancient humans were deciding the fate of not just themselves, but of every species that would ever exist. The seeded worlds are the key, said a third ancient human. Have planted the seeds of intelligence across the galaxy. These new species will grow and develop while we find a solution to our problem. But what if we can't find a solution? Asked the first speaker. There was a long pause before the answer came. Then we must make the ultimate sacrifice. We must destroy ourselves and start over. Alina felt tears running down her face as she understood what the ancient humans had planned. They had created all the intelligent species in the galaxy as backup copies of themselves. Not exact copies, but variations that would preserve the essential qualities of human consciousness, creativity, curiosity, the ability to love and hope and dream. The holographic display showed the ancient humans' final plan. They would scatter their advanced knowledge across the galaxy, hiding it in facilities like this one. They would destroy their own civilization to prevent themselves from becoming monsters. And they would ensure that one of their seeded worlds would eventually evolve a species that could carry on their legacy. Earth, Alina whispered. They chose Earth as their backup plan. The images showed the ancient humans making their final preparations. They visited Earth one last time, using their technology to ensure that the planet would develop exactly the right conditions for their plan to work. They arranged for the great extinction that would wipe out the dinosaurs and make room for mammals to evolve. They set up the genetic triggers that would eventually lead to the development of modern humans. We are them, Alina said, the full truth finally becoming clear. Modern humans aren't a new species. We're the ancient humans reborn. The holographic display showed her the proof. The genetic patterns of modern humans contained hidden sequences that were identical to those of the ancient humans. The same creativity, the same drive to explore and build and create. The same potential for both great good and terrible destruction. They reset themselves, Marcus said, understanding dawning in his voice. They chose to go back to the beginning and try again. Alina looked around at her companions, Commander Vec and Vex, representatives of species that had been created by ancient human technology. All this time, the younger races had been thinking of humans as the newcomers to the galaxy. But the truth was exactly the opposite. Humans were the galaxy's original children, finally coming home. Too late, they realized humans were the first elder race part. 4. The Great Sacrifice. Alina watched as the holographic display showed her the final chapter of the ancient human civilization. The crystal under her hand grew warmer, and she could feel the emotions of those long-dead ancestors flowing through the technology itself. Fear, sadness, but also hope. So much hope that it made her heart ache. The transformation cannot be stopped, said one of the ancient humans in the recording. Alina could see that this being had once looked human, but now their body flickered between solid flesh and pure energy. We have perhaps a few hundred years before we lose ourselves completely. The chamber around Alina filled with images of the ancient humans in their final form, while some of them were giants made of living light. Others had become so advanced that they existed as pure thought. Their consciousness spread across entire star systems. They had power beyond imagination. They could create or destroy planets with a thought, manipulate time itself, even reach into other dimensions. But they were no longer human in any way that mattered. Look at what we have become, said another. Ancient human, their voice echoing strangely as if it came from multiple speakers at once. We can create entire universes, but we cannot remember what it feels like to hold a child in our arms. We can see across all of time, but we have forgotten what it means to laugh with friends. Alina realized she was watching the most tragic transformation in history. The ancient humans had gained godlike power, but they had lost their souls in the process. They could do anything except be human. The decision is made, announced what seemed to be their leader. This being appeared as a shifting form of golden light that hurt to look at directly. We cannot allow ourselves to continue on this path. We must reset everything and try again. The holographic display showed Alina the ancient humans' final plan in terrible detail. They would not just destroy their civilization, they would erase every trace of their existence from the galaxy. Every city, every machine, every sign that they had ever lived would be wiped away. But it would not be random destruction. It would be carefully controlled, designed to give their children the best possible chance at success. The seeded worlds must be protected, said the leader. Each species we have created carries a part of our original nature. They will grow and learn and eventually take our place as guardians of the galaxy. Alina watched as the ancient humans began their great work of destruction. But she could see now that it wasn't destruction at all. It was the most loving act in galactic history. They were sacrificing everything they had built so that their children could have a better future. The Earth project is most critical, said one of the planners. This world will birth a species that carries our complete genetic memory. They will be us, reborn without our mistakes. The images showed Alina how carefully the ancient humans had planned humanity's future. They had arranged the great extinction that would clear Earth of the dinosaurs. They had guided the evolution of mammals, ensuring that one branch would develop. The intelligence and creativity needed to rebuild civilization. But most importantly, they had hidden pieces of their own consciousness in humanity's genetic code. Each human child will carry fragments of our memories, explained the ancient leader. Not conscious memories, but deeper ones. The drive to explore, to build, to reach for the stars. The ability to love and hope and dream. These are the gifts we give to our future selves. Alina felt a strange sensation, as if something was waking up inside her mind. The crystal under her hand was getting warmer. She could swear she was beginning to remember things that had happened millions of years before she was born. The awakening will come when they are ready, continued the ancient human. When the reborn humans have developed enough to handle the truth, they will find our hidden facilities. The knowledge we have preserved will unlock the memories we have placed within them. Marcus was studying his instruments with growing excitement. Alina, something is happening to you. Your brain activity is off the charts. Alina could feel it too. Memories that weren't her own were beginning to surface. She remembered flying between the stars in ships made of living crystal. She remembered standing on worlds that no longer existed, watching young civilizations take their first steps toward intelligence. She remembered the terrible choice that had led to this moment. We are them, she whispered, but now she understood what that really meant. We're not just their descendants. We're their reincarnation. The holographic display showed the final preparations for the great sacrifice. The ancient humans had spent years moving their most important knowledge into hidden facilities across the galaxy. They had created backup plans for their backup plans, ensuring that no matter what happened, some trace of their wisdom would survive. The other species we have created will serve as guardians, said one of the planners. They will maintain civilization during the long wait for humanity's return. They will explore the galaxy, build new technologies, and prepare the way for our children. Alina looked at Commander Thek and Vex with new understanding. Their species hadn't been created as servants or tools. They'd been created as elder siblings, meant to watch over the galaxy until humanity was ready to take its place as the galaxy's inheritors. Your ancestors were never supposed to be rulers, she said to them. You were supposed to be teachers. Final phase of the ancient plan was the most heartbreaking. Alina watched as the godlike beings who had once been human gathered on Earth for the last time. They looked down at the blue-green world that would someday give birth to their reborn selves. Remember us? Said their leader, speaking directly into the crystal that would preserve this message for millions of years. Remember what we were before we lost ourselves. Learn from our mistakes. Find a better way to grow and change without losing what makes you human. The ancient humans joined hands, or the energy patterns that had once been hands, and began their final act. Lena watched in awe as they poured all of their remaining humanity into the genetic templates they had hidden in Earth's biosphere. Every emotion, every memory, every spark of creativity they still possessed was given to their future selves. Then they dissolved themselves into pure energy and scattered across the cosmos. leaving behind only empty worlds and the hope that their children would succeed where they had failed. The holographic display faded, leaving Alina and her team standing in the quiet chamber. But Alina could feel something new inside her mind, memories and knowledge that belonged to her ancient predecessors. She was still human, but she was also something more. She was the bridge between what humanity had been and what it could become again. Too late, they realized humans were the first elder race part. 5. The awakening Lena felt the crystal grow warm under her hand as new knowledge flooded into her mind. The memories weren't hers, but they felt familiar, like dreams she had forgotten. Upon waking, she could see through the eyes of the ancient humans, feel their emotions, understand their hopes and fears as if they were her own. "Something is happening to me," she said to her team, her voice carrying new authority that hadn't been there before. "I can remember things, not from my life, but from before. It's from when we were gods." Marcus stepped closer, his instruments beeping. "Wildly, your brain patterns are completely different. It's like you're becoming someone else." But Alina knew that wasn't right. She wasn't becoming someone else. She was becoming who she had always been meant to be. The genetic locks that had been placed in human DNA millions of years ago were finally opening. The sleeping memories of the ancient humans were waking up. "I can see the galaxy as it was," she said, her eyes closed as visions flowed through her mind. Beautiful worlds filled with impossible cities. Technology that was more like art than science. We were explorers, builders, dreamers. We reached for the stars because we couldn't help ourselves. Commander Thek made worried sounds through his breathing machine. This is what happened to the Ancient Ones. The transformation that made them lose their humanity. "No," Alina said, opening her eyes and looking at him with new understanding. "This is different. They evolved too fast, without guidance, without wisdom. But we have their memories now. We know what mistakes to avoid." The crystal began to pulse with brighter light, and Alina realized it was responding to her awakening consciousness. She could feel other crystals like it across the galaxy, hidden in secret facilities on dozens of worlds. And through those crystals, she could sense something incredible. Other humans were waking up too. "It's happening everywhere," she said with wonder. "Every human in the galaxy is starting to remember. Not all at once, but slowly, carefully, the way the ancients planned it." Marcus was studying the readings from his instruments. The energy patterns from this facility are being transmitted across space. It's like a signal that's activating something in human DNA. Alina nodded, understanding flooding through her as more memories surfaced. The ancients built safeguards into the awakening process. We won't lose ourselves like they did because we have their wisdom to guide us. We know what went wrong. First time, she could feel the knowledge of her ancestors flowing into her mind, not just technical information, but deeper wisdom about how to grow and change without losing what made them human. The ancient humans had learned from their mistakes, and they had built those lessons into the genetic memory they left behind. "We are them, but we are also more than them," Alina said. "We have their knowledge, but we also have 65 million years of new experiences. The things our seeded children have learned, the perspectives they've developed, all of that is part of us now too." Vex's crystal body was flashing with different colors as he processed what he was hearing. "You mean, the knowledge my people have gained, the wisdom of Commander Thek's species, all of that will become part of humanity's awakening?" "Yes," Alina said with growing excitement. "The ancients didn't just create you as caretakers of the galaxy. They created you as teachers. Your species were meant to develop different ways of thinking, different approaches to problem solving. When humanity awakens, we will inherit not just our own ancient wisdom, but all the knowledge that every species in the galaxy has discovered." The implications were staggering. Alina could see it all now, the true purpose behind the ancient humans' plan. They hadn't just reset their own civilization. They had created a galaxy-wide network of intelligence, with each species contributing their own unique perspective to the whole. "The Altarians developed advanced mathematics and science," Alina said, looking at Commander Thek. "Your people learned to work together in perfect harmony. The Centauri Collective discovered how to communicate through crystal resonance. The gas breathers of the outer rim learned to see time differently than the rest of us. She paused as another wave of memories washed over her. All of these discoveries were meant to come together when humanity awakened. We were meant to learn from everyone to become more than any single species could be alone. Marcus was shaking his head in amazement. So the younger races weren't just keeping civilization going while humanity evolved. They were actively preparing for this moment. Without even knowing it, Alina agreed. The genetic programming the ancients built into each species included subtle drives to explore certain areas of knowledge. Each race was guided to discover different pieces of the puzzle. The crystal under Elena's hand pulsed again, and suddenly she could sense human minds awakening across the galaxy. On Earth, scientists were suddenly understanding concepts that had puzzled them for years. On the human colonies, engineers were having breakthrough ideas that would revolutionize technology. Everywhere humans lived, the awakening was beginning, but it wasn't the terrifying transformation that had destroyed the ancient civilization. This awakening was gentle, controlled, designed to preserve humanity rather than transcend it. I can feel them, Alina said with tears in her eyes. All the humans who are starting to remember. We're connected now, linked by the same genetic memories, but we're still individuals. We're still human. Commander Thek approached her carefully. What does this mean for the rest of us? For the species that were created to serve as your guardians, Alina looked at him with compassion and understanding. It means your job is complete. You've kept the galaxy safe and prosperous while humanity grew up. Now we can all work together as equals. She could see the future spreading out before them like a map made of light. Humanity would take its place as the galaxy's inheritors, but not as rulers or conquerors. They would be leaders, yes, but the kind of leaders who serve rather than command. The ancients made one crucial mistake, Alina said as the visions continued to flow through her mind. They tried to transcend alone. They thought godhood meant leaving everyone else behind, but we know better now. The crystal's light began to fade as the awakening process completed itself. Alina could feel the genetic locks in her DNA settling into their new configuration. She was still herself, still human, but she was also connected to something vast and wonderful, the collective wisdom of an entire galaxy. We won't make the same mistakes, she said firmly. We'll grow and change and become more than we are, but we'll do it together. All of us. Humans and Altarians and Centauri and every other species in the galaxy. Alina removed her hand from the crystal and turned to face her companions. The awakening was complete, but this wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. Humanity had finally come home, not as conquerors returning to claim their throne, but as children who had learned wisdom, and were ready to help their family reach for the stars together, the galaxy's greatest. Civilization hadn't fallen after all. It had just been waiting for the right moment to be reborn.